Hey there, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Boom, 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 boom. Russia goes boom because the explosions are happening all across Russia as Ukraine is growing their long-range strike capabilities. It's so much that, in fact, I could have spent this whole episode just talking about some of the strikes. There are plenty, and a lot of them are very notable. These news and more in today's daily news show. Let's begin. And we start talking about notable strikes by talking about the one that came very close to the main perpetrator at hand, Vladimir Putin. During his visit at the VOLIA in Sochi conference, where he spoke and talked a lot of nonsense, Ukrainians decided to say hi and they sent in some drones. Obviously, Putin cares a lot about his pitiful existence, so most likely all of these drones were shut down. It is, however, very nice to know that Ukrainians are keeping Putin on his toes. But let's move to strikes that actually did some notable damage. First one is the Liutyi Drone strikes on the Russian oil refinery in Orsk. Orsk is a notable place because it is located over 1,400 kilometers away from the border of Ukraine and was one of the longest strikes that Ukrainians have performed to date. Notable on this strike was the Liutyi drone that was launched. It was the first ever drone of this category that was noted to be colored black. So it's clear that Ukrainians are trying to adapt some of these techniques that Russians have been using when they recolored their Shahid drones from gray, silverish to black. Now Ukrainians are adapting that tech as well, making it harder for any kind of Russians to visually intercept this drone over the night sky, because 1,400 kilometers, it takes a while for this slow-moving drone to get there. And as it was sinking in that Ukrainians are able to strike refineries 1,400 kilometers away, a new report came in about the strike in Tyumen. And Tyumen is located over 2,000 kilometers away from Ukrainian front line. And there was already 3 drones flying into that area. And at first, Russians were reporting that drones overshot and they really didn't hit anything, that nothing was actually damaged. Unfortunately for them, the follow-ups exist. So no, the oil refinery was indeed struck, and as far as we understand, actually the important part of the refinery was actually taken out. So if this is indeed true, then Russia just lost, at least for the time being, the ability to refine over 7.5 million tons of oil per year. Now, it's important to note that in a lot of these strikes, we saw that facilities have been covered with the anti-drone nets, even this one that is over 2,000 kilometers away. However, anti-drone nets don't really help against this caliber of drones because the explosions are just so big with the warhead size that usually these drones are carrying. So these nets, I mean, they're a nice symbolic gesture, I guess, but they're not really providing any real protection for the sensitive equipment needed to refine oil. Ukrainians struck a chemical plant in the Ural Mountains. Azot branch of GSC Uralchem in Perm region have been struck. It is located 1,600 kilometers away from Ukrainian borders. And wherever there is like Azot and any kind of chemical plant, most likely we're talking about any kind of gunpowder or explosives manufacturing facility. Oil refinery in the Leningrad region is being struck. It's very important because this is one of the European oil refineries, and it's a prime one that Russians are using to refine and export their oil and oil products. So for the third time now, it has been struck as it was being repaired. Ukrainians' drones struck the 4th largest oil refinery as well in Nizhny Novgorod, about 800 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Ukrainian defense forces attacked one of the largest oil depots in Crimea. And this one is very fun because of the strikes of the Ukrainian oil refineries. There have been major issues with gasoline all over the periphery of Russia, including the occupied territories especially, and Crimea. Currently, there is basically restrictions on how much gasoline can be sold to a person in Crimea. It is now capped at 20 liters. And the governor, the current governor, the appointed governor by Putin of this occupied region of Ukraine, has been stating that they're working on a solution to get gasoline into the gas stations on the island. So they just brought a lot of the gasoline and oil products into that region, into these facilities, stocked up just to make sure that they can distribute it shortly. And that's when it got struck. Not only Belgorod region is experiencing the Ukrainian counter-strikes as punishment for the Russian attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure, now it is also Bryansk region. Ukrainians have struck 3 energy facilities in the Bryansk region as a response on the attacks that has been ongoing on Ukrainian cities. Russian drones are continuing flying into the European cities and causing disruptions. For the second time now, the Munich airport, one of the really big airports inside Europe, has been forced to halt operations. Drones have been spotted in also other parts of Europe, and this once again should be pushing us to do more to fight the Russian hybrid warfare. I'll remind you that Russia, in their military doctrine, does not distinguish between hybrid warfare and regular warfare. It is all considered part of warfare. It is only us in the Western nation that has been gaslit to distinguish this, like, oh, there is this war and there is this other type of warfare. So we are actually preventing ourselves from proper response. Russia sees this as one way and one way only, as their warfare against us. Especially when you hear stories like this, that United Kingdom acknowledges that Russia persistently trying to jam the UK satellites. This is an active warfare action. Like, they're literally trying to sabotage our equipment. We are living in some weird reality where at the start of this war, I was trying to advocate and was hoping that the European nations will close the skies over Ukraine. But to be honest, as the war progressed, I'm now worried, do we have the closed skies over Europe at all? Another reminder is obviously the unseen warfare that Ukraine is fighting and that we should learn from as well. In Mykolaiv region, the Ukrainian security services were able to uncover the Russian spy network. And when we talk spy networks, oftentimes we think about, well, this is some kind of special forces operating, you know, these James Bond, like with some secret people operating with code words. But this is not the case. During a special operation in Mykolaiv, a Russian female agent was detained as she attempted to identify the locations of defense enterprise dispersed facilities in region. Investigation revealed that the woman recruited her partner, an employee of a Ukrainian defense industrial complex, to assist in the operation. And I want you to look at these pictures. So here's a man, and then here is the woman. And the first thing that you look at this and see is they're just like regular people. They are not like super secret operation guys or anything. It's just regular people. And they're being hired by Russians over their Telegram channels, where they're trying to leverage and use whatever connections they have. So I want to say this as a message of warning for everyone that is going to Ukraine and for everyone that is within this area altogether. People that you might never suspect, people that you might not think are related to Russia or anything else, could be potentially working with this. Just as I said, look at them. It's just regular people that you might see when you're carrying out trash outside. A lot of you have heard the news that Czech Trump has won the Czech elections. And Andrej Babiš is pretty much fitting that picture. However, while he did run on the anti-Ukrainian rhetoric, a lot of people attributed that to mostly trying to appeal to various groups to get votes. It seems that he can be swayed. So most likely he could be in the same camp as Robert Fico of Slovakia, rather than the Orban that is very, very much anti-Ukraine. So especially he has good relationship with Trump, and if Zelensky was able to deal with Trump, I'm pretty sure they will able to find some kind of a common position also with Babiš. Now, obviously, we should expect that Czechia will stop donating a lot of aid to Ukraine. Maybe it will be sold. He did say that potentially it could be moved to the NATO, this Czech initiative. But all in all, I do see that and read and hear what he's saying and doing, and feels that he's more of a populist rather than anti-Ukraine guy. And talking about Fico and Slovakia, just to underscore my point, Slovakia is preparing and sending first non-lethal defense aid package to Ukraine since Robert Fico took office. Yes, you heard me right. Slovakia will be sending an aid package to Ukraine. It will be non-lethal, but the proof is in the pudding. So even with Robert Fico, like a known person that disagrees a lot with what Ukraine is doing and has been supported Orban, at least he's able to be persuaded to support Ukraine non-lethally. So I do believe that this additionally gives ground to the news about Andrej Babiš. And Donald Trump seems to be drifting very much into the same direction. I'm not completely sure about what's happening in Trump's head. I leave it to the Trump analysts to decide what is specifically happening there and how he's thinking. But in his latest statements, it does seem that Trump is considering sending Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. It is considered that potentially he meant that it would be Barracuda missiles, and he just misunderstood which specifically were meant that going to be sent to Ukraine, because Barracuda missiles were approved to be sent to Ukraine. However, all this in all is good for one reason and one reason only, that this allows a lot of people that are in support of Ukraine to do more to support Ukraine. Donald Trump has been very, very mellow since the big humiliation that Putin put Donald Trump through at Alaska, where Putin just rejected any and all, like a kind of hand and offer that Donald Trump proposed to Putin. And this is just not nice from Putin's side, to say the least, whenever you get a deal like was offered from Donald Trump. No one gets those kind of deals. So it is very good that it's being discussed, the Tomahawk missiles deliveries to Ukraine. Tomahawk missiles would not be a game changer for Ukraine. They are relatively limited quantities of Tomahawk missiles that could be exported, though there are discussions that potential Netherlands is considering purchasing right now 160 Tomahawk missiles. Whether they will be donated to Ukraine or not, we will see. But more importantly, there's also a very limited number of launchers available for these Tomahawk missiles. I do feel that delivery of those missiles would definitely break a lot of the barriers for any and all other weapon deliveries to Ukraine. So overall, this is positive news. We should take it positively. And thank you to people of United States for continuous support of Ukraine. Greece is getting ready to contribute to Ukraine by transferring M110A2 self-propelled howitzers and cluster munitions to Ukraine. And this is fantastic. For a longer time, Greece was not willing to send a lot of aid to Ukraine. They were only kind of agreeing to send the things that would be exchanged for some other things, like sending some older tanks that could be exchanged for deliveries of newer tanks to them. And this is understandable because Greece is one of the more militarized countries in Europe because of their ongoing, very tight relationships with Turkey, specifically around Cyprus. And we see that Greece now reviewing and considering what they can and cannot use for their own needs and what is critical for them, and then delivering and sending to Ukraine what is not critical. This is fantastic. And we're talking quite significant quantities. 150,000 shells for these artillery pieces, together with 60 units altogether, and additional missiles and cluster munitions. Well, sign me up. This is a great deal. Thank you so much to people in Greece. And then the nail in the Russian coffin is that Zelensky stating that weapons manufacturing by Ukraine right now is 40% of all of the needs of the front line. And he's stating that by the end of 2025, about half of all production of what is necessary for Ukraine will be Ukrainian made. And this goes well into the timeline that I have outlined many times over the last couple of years. I stated that by the end of 2026, Russia will have big issues as Ukraine and the Europeans will scale up production. We are very much on that pathway, and that prediction that I did a couple of years ago is still very true. And this is absolutely terrible news for Russia, because the end equation part of my prediction was that Russia is just going to be ultra screwed if they will not get out of this war quickly and go into the long, prolonged conflict, because then Europeans and Ukrainians are just going to crush them over time. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it this far, please hit the subscribe button. It really helps elevate the video in the algorithms so more people can see it. Guys, continue supporting Ukraine, continue supporting Ukrainian armed forces. I love you. Slava Ukraini, and I will see you next time.